You guys are not going to believe where Harry thinks Jadon Sancho should play for Chelsea. In this podcast, we're building our best Chelsea 11 for right now. And how does that look in 6 months after another transfer window? Let's get into things. Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the 3 More Points podcast. It's been the worst international break in living memory, but we are finally out of the woods. Noni Madueke on his England debut gets himself an assist and, of course, famously coined on the GBFC channel in the last 3 More Points podcast episode, Harry said that he is the reincarnation of a still alive Mohamed Salah. Harry, welcome back to GBFC. Of course, welcome back to the 3 More Points podcast. What are we going to do today for the people of the internet?
Hello, George. We're gonna have a look at the Chelsea lineup. I think we're gonna have a little chat about it. We're gonna see what we think right now the strongest 11 is for the next game, for the next sequence of games. And I think we're also going to try and predict and see what we think the best team may be in like 6 months or maybe towards the end of the season. Because, you know, that will be very different, I feel, George. I think it could be very different.
I think it's going to be very different. It depends who you listen to at the minute, really, isn't it? I think like every Chelsea fan at the moment is either the owners are rubbish, we hate everything, and we better lose because then it's proof that the owners are rubbish. No, we just like... Everyone's opinions at the moment about Chelsea are all over the place. And I kind of just hope that the football is going to give us some kind of just like, well, at least we're winning on the field. And a winning lineup for Chelsea at the moment, it's an interesting one because we've got a massive squad of players. We've got a load of new signings. There's also a lot of players that have left. And then there's also the small matter of a transfer window in January where still, despite signing for Galatasaray, Victor Osimhen is still the name on many people's lips. There is still a lot of rumours that despite the chaos that is going on right now at Chelsea with Todd Boehly, Behdad Eghbali, Clearlake, who wants this, who wants that, there's still a lot of talk about potentially signing a striker. So I think what we'll find out as this podcast goes on is that it could be a very fluid process this season in the Chelsea team. And I don't know about you, but as much as a lot of people, myself included, I know you didn't want us to sell Gallagher. I do feel as though the midfield right now may actually be my biggest concern in terms of just simply having enough players available. What do you think?
It changes every week, doesn't it? What's the biggest concern? Oh, we need a striker. Oh, we need a centre-back. Oh, we need a midfielder. Like, have we signed any players? It's mad. No, we are thin. We are weirdly a bit thin in the middle of the pitch. I think it's an interesting one because that's actually, we'll get to it, but that's actually one of the most contentious positions in the team right now. It is, you know, who are the 2 starters in that double pivot, and we'll get to that. But for sure, you know, as I've not been on the podcast for a while, anyone who watched us last season will know I was a massive fan of Gallagher. I was sick when we sold him, but we won't go back into that because it's been and gone now. But
sick
yeah.
Because of something else, or that made you physically revolt and throw up?
I didn't actually projectile vomit, George. There was a little bit that came out, but nothing crazy. But no, I was very angry when we sold him, to be honest, because I hate this PSR stuff. It just, you know, I always said to you last season, when you look at that Man United team that Fergie had, or many of the big clubs, when they've won titles, you always have those really important squad players, you know, that fill in the gaps when your top players are out. Not only that, but will also come in and do a tactical job. And I always used to say he's a bit like our Park Ji-sung, you know, like that guy that will play all the big matches, has the really good work rate. Probably isn't like the best of all the players technically, but anyway, I'm gutted he's gone. Enough of that because he's gone. But yeah,
I think that was such a good point though. Like you've shut yourself off there for no reason. I think of all of the people in the world, like people get really pissed off if people praise Gallagher. I don't know why. It's just like a thing where like if you say too many good things in a row about him, everyone's like, but you did it to yourself. Well, you literally cut yourself off after such a salient point.
Well, I just don't want
to.
I don't want to bother people, you know, because we've been over it and he's gone. He's gone. There's no point looking back now.
It's a good point. It's a good point. It's a very good point. But one thing I do find interesting is how you've already kind of segued us in to a double pivot. Is it definitely a double pivot? Or, like, when we're talking about the best 11, this isn't the Bournemouth preview, by the way. That's coming out later in the week. But if it's the best 11, is it definitely a pivot? And if so, why do you think it's a pivot?
Yeah, okay, so that's good. We should choose our formation to begin. So
we should.
I do think a 4-2-3-1 is the right way. I think, obviously, that changes into a back 3 when we're attacking. But, you know, picking it as it starts when you line up. I think a 4-2-3 on the double pivot because, well, firstly, if we played a 4-3-3, we only have 3 central midfielders. So if one of those gets injured, we've kind of got a bit of a problem. Well, I suppose we've got 4, including Dewsbury Hall, to be fair. But I think he was more of a 10 at Leicester, wasn't he, under Maresca? So I don't even know if he can play that role.
He was playing as an 8, like defensively. This was so weird, but it's also not weird. Like to see the way that Dewsbury Hall played for Maresca at Leicester. Like, isn't it so crazy to find that there is a massive difference between playing for Leicester in the Championship and then playing for Chelsea against Man City in the Premier League? It just doesn't look like it's the same player, but not necessarily against Man City, but against Servette. I think you're right about the pivot. I think the problem is that when we go through this team, even though we're probably going to agree, I think, on the back line, I think the back line, there's still a lot of question marks. I don't think I don't think we've got bad defenders. I just think there's a lot of question marks about the amount of pressure that you are put under when you're playing out from the back. So I think we should start right at the very back because I think the pressure that is put on the defence starts from the goalkeeper in the case of Chelsea's best 11, to be quite honest. Because Philip Jorgensen is brand new, right? We've bought him in. He's a shiny new goalkeeper, but like he's not as shiny, if you know what I mean. We're not bought in like an Edison or an Alisson. He's not going to be like your Steven Gerrards and your Thierry Henrys and your shootout cards. But Philip Jorgensen is an option, and Robert Sanchez is also supposedly the number 1 goalkeeper at Chelsea. Thoughts on Sanchez, please, Harry, because I think people are tired of hearing mine.
Yeah, I don't think he's very good, to be honest with you, is the long and short of it. But I just think that he was Brighton's second keeper when we bought him, and I don't see how that would ever make him Chelsea's first keeper. He was in and out of the team. Even before he was kind of like fully relegated to second keeper, is it Steele that's the other keeper they have? He always seems to like interchange with him. So
yeah, Verbruggen now I think.
So Verbruggen now, but
I think a lot of goalies, yeah.
Yeah. So, but Sanchez wasn't even number 1 when he came to us. I feel like it was a bit of an opportunistic signing because obviously I think the goalkeeper coach came from Brighton. Am I right? So then I think he liked him. And he was like, let's get him over. And so they were like, yeah, let's do it. But you could no well say that he should be Chelsea's number 1 keeper. I think basically he seems like he's more in the modern mold of keeper with his feet, but even that's like not the best, but it's good enough. But then when it comes to actual shot stopping, I think he's like well below the mark. And I think like every time we score a goal, the first thing I do is I think, should he have saved that? And because I'm expecting him to not make routine saves. I'm expecting him to, or maybe routine's not fair, but I'm definitely not expecting him to pull off saves that like I would expect, a top like 10% in the world goalkeeper to make. And at the end of the day, I get that modern football is evolved. I get the football has to be good with the goalkeeper has to be good with their feet and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the number 1 responsibility of the keeper is to save shots on the goal. And I don't think he's that good at it. So, and when you look at the goalkeepers we've had in recent history, Thibaut Courtois, Petr Cech, Carlo Cudicini, he just doesn't, he's not fit to wear the shirt in my opinion. And I mean that respectfully.
Yeah, I think I've also bashed him, and I saw a moment against Celtic in pre-season where I'm like, damn, like it was John Terry-esque goalkeeping, I'm going to say. Remember when Terry dived at Grant Holt's feet to stop Norwich going in on goal?
With his head, yeah.
He was throwing his body around. I'm like, this is what I want from a Chelsea keeper. I don't know if it was the case if it was pre-season and there was a lot of up in the airs, who's the number 1 going to be. And I think Sanchez kind of got it in that moment, really. I think Jorgensen could be a decent goalkeeper, but again, it's like we've bought in another question mark. There's another player that we've bought in, and we don't really know how good he is. I think since the season started, the Villarreal owner or something said, we expected to have him for a couple more years, and I think he's gone too early, actually. And to be fair, when you're playing at Villarreal, who are not like the worst team in La Liga. They're a very well-respected club. They quite often dip like into European football and then they dip with relegation fodder, and then like they're a good side. They're not a bad team. Famously played against Chelsea in the Super Cup not too long ago, which we won. For me, I don't see a world where I don't see Sanchez making a mistake. So I think if we're talking about like the best 11 right now, like I'm not comfortable with saying best and putting Sanchez in goal, to be honest. But in 6 months, I think Philip Jorgensen is going to be Chelsea's number one goalkeeper. Purely because, based on what I know of Sanchez so far, like... and again, I don't want this to be a negative video because like I'm so tired of negative content about Chelsea on the internet right now. But like, I'm not going to lie and say that I'm really content with the goalkeeping position. Yeah, I think what Sanchez did against Wolves was excellent. Like that ball that he played for Palmer's goal, like that's unbelievable. But like everybody is capable of that. Do you know what I mean? Like, everyone can do that once in a while.
It's not being negative. It's just, as you like to say, calling a spade a spade. It's like this conversation just really reminded me of. Do you remember when Pep went to City and like realized that Joe Hart couldn't dive left? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it was just like it's just like, oh, like he's been the guy, but he's nowhere near good enough. And it's like we're just saying what it is. Sanchez isn't good enough to be Chelsea's number one goalie if we want to win the Premier League, if we want to win the Champions League, all these big trophies. So I think we can agree on that right now Sanchez is number one, so we'd put him in the team for now, but in the team for 6 months, let's say in 6 months' time, it potentially could be Jorgensen, because hopefully the ceiling is a bit higher.
Well, we've got 2 different graphics that we're going to keep going through as this video goes on. Now, this is actually such an interesting video to do because I can already see here what is going to come out of my mouth, at least for the defense. And Harry, that is an astronomical glass of water that you've got yourselves there. Here's me with my flipping festival goers cup that you get because, well, they're trying to eliminate plastic these days. Good luck with that.
Festival goers cup.
It is. It's from the Wonder Fruit Festival in 2023.
Very good.
It's very nice, but that is excellent water. Is that part of your up-and-coming gym routine for the boxing channel?
No, it's just my, you've got to get your water in, George, and my glasses are all dirty right now, so I'm just going straight from the source.
Harry's the guy who doesn't wash up, and then when the cleaners can't come, he goes and buys new pans instead of cleaning them.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Most people don't have a cleaner though, George, and I don't anymore now. I don't live in Bali, so there you go. Let's get into the defense, George, because there's a couple of really difficult dilemmas to solve in here. I think, right now, we've got to consider injuries and stuff like that. But then in the 6 month team, we can look ahead and go, if everyone's fit and well and healthy in an ideal world, who's going to be the starters in these positions? So should we start with right back?
I think we should start with right back, but there's a lot of questions about Reece James right now. Like, is Reece James fit right now? Maybe, but then also like maybe not. Gusto's injured. Like, we're actually a bit screwed. Yeah,
how injured is he? What's the situation with that?
I mean, he didn't go with the France under-21s or the French national team. I think he's still playing for the under-21s, Gusto. But like at the same time, I think more so to the point, if he wasn't fit when we had the international break and then he didn't go on the internationals, we've not heard specifically right now that he's back. So what would you say Chelsea should do? Because this is for like a temporary fix right now. We're not going to put it in the lineup graphic, but like, would you say moving Caicedo, who played at right back for Brighton at times, is a good idea?
I've actually got a crazy solution for you. I got crazy.
Don't tell me you're going to play a right back at right back.
No. We don't have any right backs, do we? We have no right backs right now.
Josh Achampong. Really talented footballer.
Do you rate him?
Paris Saint-Germain wanted him. Yeah. I mean, I've not seen enough of him to sit here and say to you, like, looking into the lens of the camera, yeah, I really rate him. He's Premier League ready, and I think he's going to do it. But I absolutely will sit here and say that an academy player should at least be given a chance before we write him off and take supposedly the most important defensive midfielder at the club and taking him out of position and playing him in a different position again. That, for me, I just think is crazy.
I've got
to make that the first call.
I've got a thought exercise for you here. This is purely experimental. Let's just talk this through. Let's just think about this.
Okay, I'm with you.
Okay, so given the nature of our formation and how we have one fullback that inverts and one that goes forward, and then it kind of becomes a back three. So essentially, you have that spare defender that goes up and down and is a more offensive player. And given the abundance of attackers that we have in the squad right now, what would you say to some kind of tactical system, if possible, that fits in Jadon Sancho playing in that position?
At right back. Jadon Sancho as right back.
In a Maresca system, keeping in mind.
To be fair, like, there was an issue with him even turning up for work at Man United. So to ask him to go and do defensive work in a Premier League football match at right back, I don't know if you've missed the mark massively.
I'm not saying I do this. Like, I'm saying let's talk about it. Let's just have a chat about it.
I'm a big no for this one, I'm afraid.
Okay.
Like, I don't want to just shut it down.
No, that's okay.
But I mean, you've asked for my opinion of it, and I just think no. I think first things first, prioritize at least playing a right back there. Number one, I would absolutely even try Disassi at right back before I even consider doing that. Tell me why you think it would work. I'm curious. I want to know why.
Well, I just feel like I think offensively it could work. And we've had players that have had to fill in wing-back roles at the club before. I remember when Pulisic had to do it for a little bit under Tuchel, and he did okay. I'm not saying it would be any kind of long-term solution, but in terms of having the best technical footballers in the squad on the pitch, I think that, you'd have to put, say, to Caicedo, like, you're going to have to cover in those spaces. You're going to have to be super alert at covering those empty spaces that he's going to leave when he goes forward. But because we've got quite a nice fixture run at the minute, I sort of wonder if it's something that could potentially work. Now, I know we're going away from home in the next couple of games, so maybe that's definitely the wrong time to try it. But, it's only when you're in the position of both of our starting right backs are out that you sort of go, can we find a creative solution here? Could we play Sancho as that kind of extra player that comes in and he comes in and I suppose defensively, it's sort of just like he does the best he can, but offensively you get so much extra. And when you look at that back three system where one tucks in and the other two you're in the middle, you have the sort of three centre-back system. It's like a back three anyway. If he's there as a wing-back, when he goes forward, Caicedo can cover that space. I don't know. I see a world in which it could potentially work, but I also feel like going away, we're vulnerable on the counter right now. We know that. So I think it might be, weakening us too much defensively, but it was just a thought I had for a moment where I was like, this could be something worth exploring. I don't know if I'd actually be brave enough to try
the way
it.
you've explained it, I actually think is relatively interesting in the sense of, like, let's say you play Cucurella left back, then he kind of becomes that third centre back, I guess you could say, and he doesn't. And that's also kind of ties in with what Maresca wants to do, seemingly. He did it more at Leicester where Pereira was the right back and he would invert, and it wasn't really explored on the left-hand side. I think a lot of people have been like, why does it have to be Gusto? Why does it have to be James? Why is the right side the inverted side? Surely we should be adaptable. And also, Cucurella did such a good job of that for Pochettino last season.
Oh, he was brilliant.
What is it? He was very good. And I think that at the minute is a question that I think 3 games into the season, it's impossible to turn around and be like, well, Maresca ain't going to do that, is he? Enzo Maresca can't do this. Like, it's still so early. But I think it's not the worst shout. You've explained that pretty well, to be fair.
I'm glad that I've talked you around slightly. But tell me, George, who would your pick be then for right now and for in 6 months? Who would you go with?
My pick right now would be if either of them are fit, whichever one it is. Like, I don't mind
they're not,
if it's Reece,
but let's assume they're
or
not.
if it's Gusto.
So for this next kind of little period.
If they're not fit, then I'm trying JustACoupleGs at right back. Okay. I think if you've got academy players that are supposedly good enough to be sold to other top European clubs, Lewis Hall at Newcastle, he's been brilliant for England under 21s in the internationals. Tino Livramento's a class footballer. Tariq Lamptey's a class footballer. Like, all of these players, when Chelsea have had injury problems at right back, left back for years, these players have ended up being sold, and shock horror, they've gone on to actually be quite good.
Yeah.
So I think if we have two first choice right backs injured, then I'm absolutely calling up the academy guy who was ready in pre-season to come and give it a go. And if it doesn't work, then, like you say, creative solution. Maybe it's trying Sancho. Maybe it's dropping Caicedo there. Don't want that personally. Maybe it's using Disassi there as well. But as of right now, I think Reece is coming back, no? Like, his match ban is over, so he's had his 3-match ban, and he's been training again, I think, which is good. So,
yeah,
look, Reece James for me is the best right back at the club, and if he's fit and firing, I think he's the best right back in the Premier League.
Yeah, probably the world when he's actually on it. Like, he's unbelievable. But yeah, no, I agree with everything you just said. I think my worry with Reece is I just don't, like, even in preseason when he was fit, like, he looked well off the pace for me. Like, he didn't look anything like, in terms of his physicality and fitness, the Reece James that I remember coming through. And I just worry that the more injuries he has, the less football he plays, the more he's just not going to be able to get back to that level. So it's concerning. But anyway, let's not mull on that too much. Okay, so for now, we're going to go with the young lad, JustACoupleGs. And for 6 months' time, we're going to go for Reece James, assuming he's fully fit and all good.
Yes, Reece James has to be the right back at Chelsea if he's fit, for sure.
Okay. All right, then. So no,
centre backs,
no
I'm
Sancho.
gonna go straight out there and say Fofana and Colwill.
Yeah.
Like that's for me is a non-negotiable. Are we agreeing on that?
Yeah, that's so easy because the other two are just not at the level right now. And like just then, we could have spoken about Disasi playing right back and it being like 3 centre backs and him being the one that tucks in and then the left back going up and down. But I don't even want to see it. I'm not interested. I just Disasi and Badiashile for me, like, and Badiashile is such a disappointment, man, because when he came in, he was so good. He was so good in the air. His passing was really accurate. So I don't know what's happened to him, but yeah.
Scored a goal at Bournemouth as well. Like, we got Bournemouth at the weekend. He scored a great goal there. Leaping up like a salmon. Keeper gets a touch on it, but parries it into his own net. But right now, he is about as out as, well, us on a Friday night if we still lived in the same town together. But
Indeed.
We're not.
It would happen.
Anyway.
It would happen. You can rest assured.
Left back is Cucurella?
Well, yes, it is. But I do want to talk about Renato Vega because he looks really interesting.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm really interested in him as a player. I feel like he's a bit of a hipster, one of those hipster. When you're a hipster football fan and you're really into like a really niche player that like came. I think that's what I feel. He makes me feel like a football hipster because I'm like, oh, this guy Renato Vega that like no one at any other club knows. I didn't know him like a few months ago. We bought him for like 12 million quid, which is just a great price. And then I've just seen him have a few little touches on the field, and he's in the Portugal squad now as well. He's had a few little touches on the field that make me think, oh, this guy looks really good actually. And with the way that you want your fullbacks to be flexible now and come into the midfield and all that sort of stuff, he looks like that guy. So I'm really intrigued. I think I want to see more of him in like one-on-one defensive situations, if I'm honest. I think that's kind of the key for me. But, Cucurella is one of those players where I've never been fully sold on him. I actually was outright against him for a while because I just thought he was so bad.
Me too, to be fair. I can't just deny that I've always been a big fan.
We were fuming at him last season, but then I have to give him full credit because I actually think he was largely responsible for that run of form we had at the end of the season where Poch changed the system. He came in and played inverted, and honestly, he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant in that sort of inverting fullback where you're mostly playing as a DM sort of role.
I mean, he also just even the fact that Pep Guardiola wanted him at City, Chelsea spent so much money on him, that does put like an added pressure on you to succeed, I guess. Yeah. And when it was like he clearly wasn't a £60 million left back, it made it very easy to just be like throwing him under the bus. But then, like you say, last season, the way that he did step into that inverted midfield role, he made Chelsea look so solid. And then not only did he do that for us, but then he backed that up by being by far the best left back at the Euros, winning the trophy, going on a flipping beer drinking bender, calling out Erling Haaland, getting pissed up every day, and then gets schooled by Erling Haaland on day one. I feel like Cucurella is that player that just like as a result of all of those things, the good and the bad side of that, he's like matured now.
I think
feel like he's arrived.
I think he's an absolute prat. Honestly, mate, I think he's an idiot, but yeah, he's good. He's a good footballer though. So yeah.
I mean, we've had a lot of like prats at Chelsea that have ended up being good ones, and I mean like Diego Costa would act like a prat, but like he'd do it in such a way that would just get under the skin and boil up around everybody else.
He did it
to avoid getting sent off, but like you're gonna make everyone else that you're interacting with pissed with you.
It was more that I just felt like with Costa he could back it up because he was that good. And
I think Cucurella's backing it up now, though.
Well, he is. You're right.
He's not getting,
but he's not that good though. Like he's good, but he's not. He's not Diego Costa going and winning us the game. Do you know what I mean? It's a bit different. But I know what you. I guess
so. But like he's like when he's squaring up to players, like because they kick his mate or something, or like I like that. I think Cucurella's kind of just got this like he's a bit like me, Like sometimes I can let my mouth go a bit like wayward if I've had a few drinks, but like I'm coming from a good place. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
I do know exactly what you mean.
It's just the delivery.
Yeah.
And I think Cucurella's kind of in that era for Chelsea now. I can't believe I almost went down that like Gen Z way of explaining things. Like he's in his current antagonizing era.
I don't even know what that. I don't even know what that means, mate. It won't surprise you to hear. I've got no idea what you're on about.
Like young people just talk about eras all the time, don't
right.
they? Like I'm in my.
No, I don't know.
I'm in this era. I'm in that era. Anyway, that's the back line. Are we agreeing that Cucurella is the left back?
Yeah, for now. But who's it going to be in 6 months?
I think the reality about Vega is he wasn't brought in to displace Cucurella right now. I think maybe in the long run, and this is what Chelsea need to be doing anyway, regardless of what's going on with the owners and whatnot. And I think that's also important to discuss here. Like, with all of the crazy stuff going on above the player level at the club, a lot of these players might not necessarily be full signings that both the manager and all of the major shareholders at Chelsea wanted. But I think with some, Vega, Gusto, it's just really smart business. We've got a sporting recruitment team at Chelsea, and whether or not they've been fully successful, it's like, what's the point in judging whether it's fully successful right now after 3 games?
Yep.
But from what I've seen, I think Vega could mold into a really useful player. And maybe, like you say, Sancho could be used at right back. Maybe Vega could also be used on the right side as well.
That's a really good point, actually. I didn't even think of that. I like that idea. Well, it's too late now. That's set, but okay. But potentially at some point. But no, it's a good point. I think that the recruitment of Vega was great, especially when you think about the amount of money we raised on Maatsen. We sold him for like sort of 20 million more. My only thing is we've still got Chilwell at the club, which is hurtful to me. But you know, it is what it is. But moving into the midfield, which is probably the toughest position to pick. And we'll say Cucurella for the 6-month team also. But the midfield, which is probably the double pivot, it's probably the hardest to go with. Is there one of those 3 players, George, out of Enzo Fernandez, Romeo Lavia, and Moises Caicedo, is there one of them that you think has to start?
Do you know what? I think Caicedo has to start, because I think this is honestly is actually really flipping tough. This isn't just like, if I was to pick my team for the game at the weekend, I'm probably picking Caicedo because I think he's undroppable, and Lavia because Enzo Fernandez has played a lot for Argentina and he's had to come back from South America.
Yep.
And also, like, Enzo Fernandez, I think we need to discuss here, because I know for a fact what you're going to say about him isn't necessarily going to be fully positive. I found it very difficult. I found it very difficult to be positive about him at the moment, but I also think when you see how he is for Argentina playing as like a number 5, a deep line playmaker, he just looks fantastic. And that's what Chelsea bought. Chelsea looked at a player that had an incredible World Cup, won the World Cup, the biggest and best trophy in sport, not even just football. And he was so good. And that's where he was playing. That's where he was being used. Why is it that Graham Potter, Frank Lampard, Pochettino, and so far Enzo Maresca, but I'm not going to say Enzo Maresca can't get the best out of him, but why is it managers at Chelsea and Chelsea in general cannot seem to get the best out of such a good footballer when he plays for his country? It's normally like players can't reach the levels for their countries because they're playing with different players that they don't play with every week. They don't train with every day. Like, why is Enzo Fernandez so difficult to place in this Chelsea team right now?
I wish I knew the answer, but my immediate instincts are that international football is very different from Premier League football. You saw that. We see that every single tournament England playing, where, you know, Southgate was insistent on us playing quite a different style from what you see in the Premier League. So there's that. You know, Premier League football is so physical, George. Like, and actually, I do believe that if you look at the last game, if you look at some of Enzo's passing highlights, particularly from that Wolves win, he did some really good stuff. He did some really good stuff getting the ball forward. I thought he did have some good forward passes and whatnot. But for me, the big problem with him is just the naivety around defensive positioning. And, you know, I think when you've got a more diminutive midfielder who's not like an absolute physical beast, who can't, like, you remember Kante, bro? Do you remember how, like, he'd be like a few yards away from the man that had the ball, and then suddenly he'd just like teleport in front of them. He just suddenly appeared in front of them, and he could actually, he could make up for being in the wrong position a lot of the time, because his little burst of speed, his timing was just exquisite. Enzo just doesn't seem to have that in his game right now. And so it's about building a structure around him so that he can dictate games, control games, make those key passes forward, and probably not have to carry those defensive responsibilities until he starts to understand the subtleties of playing that deep 6 role. Because we need him in that area of the pitch. But like the bit in the Wolves game that really, really troubled me was when they just ran over our team basically in the middle. And like we used to see it a lot last season. Yeah. And it was actually Cucurella inverting, which is what we've just spoken about, that stopped teams from doing that to us. And that, you know, that's part of the problem. So I think it's going to be a solution around him that will fix that and allow him to play in the system. As a bloke, I think he's a dick. Like I do not like him. It bothers me that he's wearing the armband. I do not like Enzo Fernandez. I just think he's petulant, and obviously there was all that crap in preseason as well. So I think he's got a lot to prove. I'm more than happy to be proven wrong about that, but I just don't get a good vibe from him, basically.
Okay. I mean, that's more than fair enough. I think a lot of Chelsea fans have also said that after what happened with the whole racism ordeal with the bus and the chants and the Instagram Live and whatnot, to then be given the Chelsea captaincy at the start of this season, I think there is currently like a conversation that Kick It Out are actually trying to have with Chelsea about how they've dealt with this. But I mean, we'll let that come to its conclusion.
But that aside, that bit of it aside, in what world is he the Chelsea captain? Like, what is it about him that qualifies him as Chelsea captain?
To be honest, for me, it would be. This is also another conversation here because Gallagher was the obvious one last season that would come in, and as much as we don't want to be like, oh, Connor, all video long, like surely you give it to Levi Colwill right now. If you're giving the captaincy to someone, I think with the Chelsea team right now that is still a bit just disjointed, they're still learning how they're going to be playing under this new manager. Surely you give it to probably the most vocal defender. Like he seems to. I think Colwill actually is an interesting discussion. As much as we're talking about the midfield, I would give it to him to almost calm him down a little bit. I think sometimes Colwill gets into these like headspaces where he looks like he wants to scrap with the first available person that is ready to give him a little bit on the field. And I think and this is something Reece doesn't do very well either.
Yep.
He's the captain, but also allows himself to boil over. Yep. And it's like, when we're talking about like that arsehole in Cucurella, the arsehole we had in Diego Costa, like so many of these Chelsea players, and I think Enzo also doesn't seem to have this in the Premier League for some reason. Like there just needs to be that little added bit of arsehole that is channeled in the right way. Because as soon as it's like I know where you're flipping laughing at, you idiot. But like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And this midfield, like, do we have enough arsehole in this midfield?
There you go, George. There's the video title for you right there. Oh my god. No, I don't think. I think we do, but maybe not in the defensive side of it, unfortunately. By the way, apologies.
So then how do we pick a pivot?
Apologies if anyone can hear what's going. I think some fire alarm or something's going off outside my building. So apologies if anyone can hear that. There's always something noisy
Harry,
going on.
Your house is falling down.
I know, mate,
Don't go and stay on the video.
I'm sorry to everyone if you can hear that. Anyway, well, I think let's come back to the captain conversation at the end because we can pick our captain once we pick the whole team. But I think picking those two in the midfield, it's so difficult. And honestly, if I'm going by player profile and what I think we need, I'm not talking about like the levels they're hitting or anything like that. But I actually think that Lavia and Enzo would be the pair for me. If I'm just going on what do I think all of them at maximum performance can do and how they match up together, for me, I think I'd have Lavia and Enzo because I think when you've got a team with this many attackers and the players inverting as well, Caicedo doesn't feel like a proper six to me when I'm watching him. I think that's what I'm trying to say. He doesn't feel like a proper six. And then Enzo's always going to go forward a bit into that more like that central 8 sort of position to play those key passes into the half to link play up. So you need that player that's in the middle dictating play. And I don't think Caicedo's that guy. I think Lavia's got the height as well that Caicedo doesn't have. Like that kind of, I'm looking more like sort of Mikel, Rodri sort of profile of player. And I do worry a little bit that Caicedo's profile doesn't fit into this system quite as well as it did before. So, yeah, I don't know, mate. It's a really difficult one. But in terms of fitness levels, consistency, all that stuff, the fact that Caicedo hit some unbelievable levels at the end of last season alongside Gallagher. But, you know, the fact that he did that, for me, it should be Caicedo. And it's got to be Enzo because Lavia's just not proven fitness yet. But it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult because I want Lavia in there. I think what the attributes he has are exactly what we need in that position because, like as I said, that moment against Wolves, that is what I see teams doing to us. They're going to counter us. They're going to channel opportunities through the middle. They're going to try and run over us because it can be done. What do you think about that?
I think for now, though, it has to be Enzo and Caicedo for now. Because of what you said about Lavia proving fitness. But overall, I think you're absolutely spot on about the profile of midfielder that Chelsea are going to need as we develop in this system. I think for me, there's no way that we get to 6 months from now and Lavia, if he stays fit, isn't in the Chelsea 11.
Okay.
And that's why, like at the start of the video, when we're talking about formation, is it a 4-2-3-1? Is it definitely a 4-2-3-1? Or is it like we've got 3 midfielders, stick them all on the pitch, they're all great players, but then we've also got flipping 796 wingers that we also need to try and fit in on the pitch. And I think Lavia has to eventually end up in this team because I think in terms of like what he could do, I think like there's so many more attributes that Lavia can tap into that could actually be beneficial to this Chelsea midfield. But right now, I can't take Caicedo out of the team.
No.
And I am still holding on massively to like, A, he's a £100 million plus player. Like crazy amount of money. B, he was insane for Brighton. C, he was unbelievable at the end of last season. He's been great for Ecuador in the games and the highlights that I've seen from him last year and also in this international. Like, I think right now it's Fernandes and Caicedo. And then, but then also like I'm relying here on Maresca getting the best out of Enzo Fernandez.
Yep.
I think Enzo Fernandez, there is a world where he just goes a bit missing here.
Yep.
I think as much as I think he could be an unbelievable player and is a fantastic number 5, I think there's definitely a world where Maresca kind of is just a bit tired of him not having that defensive astuteness.
The thing is, George, when you look at like if you think about the way City play with their midfield, they have that inverted fullback that comes into the middle, like Rico Lewis or whoever it is. And then they've got Rodri in an ideal world, who's that sort of dominating midfielder who can play the ball, who can win the ball, who maintains that position. And then ahead of that, you can kind of do not what you want, but there's like 10s and you don't necessarily need another central midfield player. So for me, for Enzo to stay in this team, he has to step it up. He has to start playing, he just has to create more chances. He has to control the tempo more. Because I was looking at his stats, actually. I think I was looking at it for the last pod because we didn't quite get onto him. But I think in the last 3 matches, he's had like 1 or 2 interceptions. I think he's had 0 tackles. I think he's had like 2 key passes. It was like, I can't remember the exact numbers, but they were very, very low. So he just needs to start influencing games more. Otherwise, you go, let's go with the more pragmatic options. Let's go with the guys who win us the ball, recycle possession. And in that case, it's going to be Caicedo and Lavia all day. But we have to make a decision on this section. So what are you saying? Who are you going to go for your 2 right now?
I'm going to say right now Caicedo and Enzo Fernandez. And then for the end in 6 months' time...
I agree with that, by the way.
This is going to sound weird. I hope it's Caicedo and Fernandez.
Okay.
And I hope Lavia is like a brilliant fit, can come on and like influence games and help us. But I'm gonna stick with that actually. I think it's so clear the more I see Enzo Fernandez play international football, and it has to be clear to the amount of people that we're employing apparently at this club to analyze data and shit. Like if you can not keep seeing all of this stuff that like the naked eye can see when Enzo Fernandez played for Argentina, if you can't see this and know that he's £100 million man and yet still not get the best out of him, then maybe he's at the wrong club.
But I just want to...
So I'm going to say I hope that's not the case.
I just want to very quickly say something, though, which is that I think Granit Xhaka is a great example of a player who was really, really underappreciated in the Premier League. And it was because a lot of the time, I think it was a lot to do with his physicality, his defensive acumen, all that stuff. So for me, Enzo has got to add that to his game. It's absolutely non-negotiable because that is the problem right now. I think his passing's been all right in the last couple of games. It needs to improve, but it has been all right. But the area where he really has to step up is physically. And a lot of that will just be understanding where to position himself at what moment and having his brain thinking 2 steps ahead defensively as well as offensively. So, yeah, I take your points, but he's missing something in his game right now.
So can we say that if he can get that, if I believe he can, I do. I still think there's a great footballer in there, and I don't just want to write him off. So let's say he does. I say he's still the defensive midfield partner with Caicedo in 6 months.
For me, in 6 months, I think it would be in a world where, looking at the system, looking at what we need, I think it'll be Enzo and Lavia, personally. Because of I think it's the extra size Lavia has. I think we need another tall midfielder in there. I think it is that. It's the extra passing ability because of the emphasis on possession and all that stuff. We do need another ball winner. Look, I think it'll probably change game to game. So I'm happy to go Enzo and Caicedo, but I think personally for me, I'd go Enzo and Lavia.
Interesting. Cool. This is such a good conversation right now about the Chelsea players. And I think before we go into the attack, it's important to know that as much as there is a lot of crazy stuff going on off the field, we actually have such a talented squad. And as we segue into that front four, which it basically is now, you've got a 10, you've got a right winger, left winger, and a striker. Well done, Benson. You've managed to get us there. For me, as much as this is difficult because there's right now so many options, I also think it's probably not that difficult.
I agree.
Because two of the players...
Because Sancho's playing right back.
No, he's not. I mean, I don't know what the comments are going to say here. Like, the comments may have absolutely loved this idea of yours. They're going to
absolutely slaughter me.
They might do, but they also might think that you've got some kind of wizardry.
It's just an idea,
guys. You never know.
It's just an idea, guys. Just play around with it. It's just an idea.
Play around with it. I think for me, Cole Palmer as a number 10 and Noni right now as a right winger, these two positions are completely non-negotiable for me. I think they have to both play together when they're fit.
Yep.
And they both have to play there.
Yep.
So if we put that up on the screen,
100%
that is
in agreement with you for now and for 6 months' time.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. Like 22 years old, Noni Madueke. I think he's got an assist for England.
Yep.
Harry Kane's 100th goal, I think it was, or whatever.
Yep.
I think he's going to the top, and Harry thinks he is.
I just want to say for all the haters on my comment last week that if he continues how he is now, I think he can be, that new Mo Salah in the Premier League for Chelsea. And I don't see that much difference between him and Salah at Roma in terms of ability and potential. I just want to let you know that he is 2 years younger than Mo Salah was at Roma. So just think about that for a second. 2 years younger. 2 years to get to the level what Salah was at Roma.
There was a very important caveat in there, which was that if he keeps going as he is right now, which I know obviously that's but still. The other two positions are left wing and striker. And for me right now, the striker is Nicholas Jackson. I think as much as Christopher Nkunku is almost like too good of a player to not have in the team, I think Cole Palmer is better and shouldn't be moved to accommodate him. And I also think that Nicholas Jackson's returns, I don't think you can take a striker out of the team who's scoring goals and getting assists just because you've got someone else that you want to play.
Yep. I agree with you.
That's my take on it for now.
So for now, it has to be Jackson for me also. I think this is why I sort of think it gets a bit interesting. I think in 6 months it will be Nkunku up front.
So you don't think? I think in 6 months it will be Osimhen.
Well, we've got to talk about what we've got right now in the squad. I think out of what we've got, I know it's a bit controversial because I think Jackson will continue to develop and whatnot, but I think Nkunku is that good. I think he's that good. I think he's someone that will have to find. He will find his place in the team. I'm absolutely sure of it. And I just think his ability to finish difficult chances that I think Jackson is lacking. I know, and look, Jackson does so many good things. He works really hard. He starts stretching the back line of other teams now with all his running that he does. He holds the ball up really well. He dribbles well. I don't know why you're smiling, but I think that Nkunku has got a lot of X factor about him, and I think that if we're struggling to score goals, which I think there may be spells when we have that, I think Nkunku will find his way into the team, and I just think he has to find a place in that team, and I believe he'll be the striker in 6 months. That's my shout.
And I like where you're going with it too, because I would hate it to be, and I've got a theory about this right now. I've got a theory that at the end of this season, Nkunku leaves Chelsea. Not because I want that to happen.
Wages?
Because
of wages?
No, maybe because of wages, and as a result of the wages and not playing time, because I think Palmer is undroppable. And like we both agreed on that already. And Palmer as a number 10 is just insane. And I think that's where Nkunku would be best, kind of playing behind the main striker, which is where he's been the best we've seen the best of him throughout his whole career, even at Chelsea, I'd say too. But I want him to find a place in this team, and that's what makes this whole building the Chelsea 11 thing so difficult, because Pedro Neto, for me, would be the left winger for now.
Completely agree.
And I think also for 6 months too, if he can at least if he can replicate the way he was playing for Wolves. And I know that a lot of people are like, yeah, but he doesn't score a lot and he doesn't get a lot of assists. Yes, but he's also playing for Wolves. Yeah. Now he's got Palmer next to him. He's got Madueke there. You've got Nicholas Jackson or Nkunku potentially up front to convert chances for you, which, you know, Cunha's a good striker for Wolves, but like there's no consistency with them scoring goals.
George,
So.
do you know what excited me so much? It was such a small thing, was that Neto cross for the Joao Felix goal. Because I cannot remember the last time I saw a Chelsea player on the wing look up and actually direct their cross to someone. Like actually spot someone's run, not just chuck it in the area and see what happens or kick it straight into the defender. Like to see that one small moment and the width that Neto can provide with the speed he has, that was enough for me to go, yeah, that guy starts and you keep and you give him his chances because, you know, some of the.
I don't know why I'm laughing because like
Still
I'm
thinking
just
about
comparing
arseholes,
him to Sterling. No, I'm not. I'm thinking about Sterling, and like when you just say that, and like the difference is just like it's like if you don't laugh, you'll cry.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's one of those situations where I think the upgrade that Chelsea have made. No disrespect to Sterling, like I think he's going to do well at Arsenal. I think he'll still do well for the rest of his footballing career. But watching him at Chelsea at times was painful. So for me, like as long as Neto stays fit, then he's going to be there now and at the end of the season. So I guess the big questions here is
6 months.
What happened?
Yeah.
Jadon, 6 months' time, like realistically, like this all depends on players staying fit, and based on Neto's injury record, like I don't know if I can say, because it's also like the levels that this Chelsea team could hit. I want to just like fathom this for a second. When you've got this amount of quality across very few positions, you've got Sancho, Neto, Felix, Nkunku, Jackson, Palmer, Madueke. I'm going to say Mudryk just in case, you never know. Like, there's so many players here. And if one of them does get injured and drops out of the team, let's say Neto does get injured, touch wood, good wooden desk here, let's hope he doesn't, but let's say Neto does get injured and Jadon Sancho comes into the Chelsea team and just is absolutely undroppable as a result of the way he plays. Like, good problem, right? Like, this is great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
100%.
if you're Pedro Neto
Yeah.
or Nicholas Jackson. Then we've also got to discuss it here because a lot of the rumours are that Chelsea will go back in for Osimhen in January, so that we don't wait till next summer when everyone's going to be like, oh shit, another season, we need a striker. United are going to want him again next summer because I don't see Rasmus Højlund scoring 20 goals this season in the Premier League.
He might. I think if he doesn't, it might not be down to him though, because I think Højlund's really good. I think it's just about United being rubbish basically, but you know, that's another conversation.
Well, that is another conversation, but I think Chelsea will be back in for Osimhen, and I wouldn't be surprised if we got him.
Right.
And if that's the case, like let's say Chelsea do sign Victor Osimhen.
Yeah.
Surely he's your striker, right?
Yeah, but do you know what the joke is? So if we signed Victor Osimhen, then for me, the next player that would have to leave to accommodate him in our attack would be Joao Felix, who we just signed. Because for me, Nkunku is the superior player. He's for me, he'd probably be better up front. I think he's better in the 10. He's probably better on the left wing as well. So that just knocks Felix down, in my opinion. And that's the issue. We've just bought Felix in. And it seems like the more I think about that move, the more I'm like, we did that because we weren't going to get the other players we wanted. And it was just to get Gallagher out the door and get the money for Gallagher in. So, yeah, man, that's a frustrating one for me. But I think the fact we signed Felix is probably why we didn't get Osimhen over the line on the final day, to be honest with you. It was a weird transfer.
There's still so many question marks about that whole thing. But then, surely, in conclusion, I think even if we don't sign Osimhen, like I'm going to say Nicholas Jackson keeps scoring goals this season.
I think
mate. Jackson will still be the Chelsea striker at the end of the year. If we sign Osimhen, then he won't be. Because like we won't sign him to be second choice. You don't sign a player like that to be second choice. No. But I genuinely believe in Nicholas Jackson.
Yeah.
A lot of people think I don't for some reason, mainly because I call him out for missing big chances. But like, oh my, like what? Like what do you mean? Like some of the chances this guy misses, I'm genuinely looking at the dog and I'm like, he could have buried that. Mason, he's asleep, but he could have. Like sometimes I'm like, I just don't understand.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do seriously think there is a player in there. And I think, especially for Maresca, like he wants the striker to drop deep. He wants the striker to be involved in build-up play. He's talked about signing someone like Sancho, who's great in 1v1s, but also great with involving other players. Like, I think Maresca sees a way to integrate all of these attacking players into the team. Joao Felix is the one that I think is almost unlucky a bit in this situation, because I think he's got a lot of ability. But like you say, I agree with your point. I think Nkunku is just better at all of the things that Felix is good at even.
Yeah. I think... Look, we should caveat this conversation by saying that, we should have done this at the beginning, by saying that, everyone's going to have their moment. This will chop and change. And when you look at the teams that win the league, they've got, look at what City were doing under Pep, all the years that they've won the league. They've always had a couple top players in each position, basically. And then one of them tends to establish himself. But it kind of goes through different periods of the season. Like, there's always a period of the season where John Stones is absolutely unbelievable. And then sometimes he's just out the team. Even when he's fit, he's just out the team. So to be a really big and successful team now, the amount of football there is to be played, the whole squad's going to be needed. So that's the first thing to say. The second thing is, on your Jackson point, 100%, I would not be surprised at all if in 6 months' time, Jackson's got even better and is an undroppable number 9 at Chelsea. I'm saying Nkunku for me in 6 months just because I've already seen him do such quality things that I believe that quality will eventually shine through when we're like, we really need goals. We're going to have to play him. But, and he needs to build his fitness too. But the final thing, George, before we wrap the pod up, is just to discuss captain quickly, because you mentioned it in the middle there. And who should captain our side now and in 6 months? Because you mentioned Levi Colwill, and I thought that was a really good point.
I think Reece James, when he's fit, is the Chelsea captain. Absolutely. You don't strip a captain of being the captain just because, you wake up and you just don't like the smell of Reece James's socks one day.
But what about
the Chelsea captain.
But what about someone who's just never fit?
But then that's it. And now you've got 2 players that are no longer part of the plans or not at the club. Gallagher and Chilwell were the vice captains. Neither of those are playing for Chelsea again. So I think Enzo Fernandez is not the right choice. I agree with you on that. And I think Levi Colwill should be that guy. I think he's showing so far this season that if played in the correct position as a centre-back, he's going to be a massive footballer for Chelsea Football Club and his country. And I think you give him that responsibility. When we're talking about people being upset about Chelsea not having Chelsea players from the academy there anymore, he is one of those who is also grown up at this football club, played for us forever, and I think he will become, by the end of this season, a household name in every person's Chelsea starting 11, guaranteed. I think it's on the wall for me. If he stays fit, Levi Colwill is going to absolutely be there, and I would give him the captaincy right now.
Yeah,
100%.
I completely agree with you. I try and think through our team, and I don't think anybody else is even in the conversation. The only other player that I would say you could potentially give it to is Cole Palmer, and that is purely from a performance level and consistency standpoint, where you're sort of leading on the field with your performances rather than your personality. Because as much as I love the lad, I can't imagine him saying too many inspirational words. But in some ways, a pressureless player, a pressureless player is actually quite a good leader in some ways, because it kind of, the rest of the team looks at him and just goes, let's just do what Cole does. But yeah, for me, it's either Colwill or Palmer right now. In 6 months' time, I hope it's Reece James. It should be Reece James if he can get himself sorted out, which we say for all the time. But yeah, that's who I'd like to captain our club. Forward.
For the video side of this podcast, I'm going to put my Chelsea 11 for now and 6 months on the screen for a little bit of time. And then we're also going to have Harry's version as well, because I think as much as this has been a great discussion where we've not potentially universally agreed on the definitives of what's going to happen, I think to round it up, what is so exciting about this Chelsea team, and again, I can't just ignore what's going on off the field, but if you're not excited about what this team could be on the pitch right now, then I think try and at least get a bit excited about it. Do you know what I mean? It's annoying that we're having owners that just keep arguing and some of them want to sell. It's annoying that we're talking about trying to move away from Stamford Bridge, but we're actually probably not going to do anything about it. It's just PR nonsense at this point. There's so much that there is to be annoyed about, but there is so much to still get excited about. Even if right now it is just well, we could be good against Bournemouth. We could be good in the next game. And I think that's what I saw against Wolves, as much as it was like it already felt a bit flat and stupid after drawing to Crystal Palace, like, just give the manager a bit of time here to get his ideas together. There's been a lot of players that were there still, that weren't on international duty, that are still learning him, still learning his mannerisms, the way that he wants them to play. And I think regardless of what's happening above, if the Chelsea team can just focus on playing football, training, and ignoring, if you can, what's going on in the bullshit above them, then I think there's too much quality in this squad for us to fail, personally.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I should also say that the manager in 6 months will be Jose Mourinho. I'm joking. No, Maresca needs time, like you just said, and I think he's going to get it. And I want to give him lots of time to develop that style and to get it into the players' minds. And yeah, for sure, I back him. I back him for now.
It's one of them where I don't know if I should put that little comment from you at the start of the video, or do I just leave it at the end here?
Yeah,
for
George,
those absolute legends that have lasted all the way until the end of the hour.
The problem with giving an absolute clicks fiend editorial control is that they're going to make you sound terrible if they have their way. So, you know, that's the life I've signed up for here, guys.
Are you calling me a clicks fiend? Actually, no, everyone's going to love that. We're like, oh, yeah, you clickbait merchant, mate. George Benson, a clickbait merchant.
Listen, you know
Weirdos.
what? If someone calls me a clickbait merchant, you know what I say? Well, you came and you've watched the video, and that was the only job of what I had to do with that stuff. So just come and enjoy the video now. Relax, you're here. You've made it here. So now enjoy yourself.
Speaking of which, you can make sure you go and check out Harry's channel, or some people call him a guy called Henry these days.
That's
the link
channel,
is
yes.
in the description. And it's a boxing channel, which boxing and football, obviously not the same sport, but very much crossover there. And Harry's doing a great job. The channel is growing. I'm enjoying the content, and I'm not even a flipping boxer. I
also just did
I
also just did a little affiliate agreement with DAZN, which is quite exciting. So if anyone watches boxing,
so
on
you
DAZN,
can now use footage.
I can do stuff. Yeah, there's things going on. You can see it all on the channel, but there's stuff going on. It's happening. It's exciting.
Nice. All right, guys, you know what to do. Subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this, and get involved with the conversation as ever in the comments down below. This is exciting, this video. Big shout out to Josh and Joey also for doing this already, because it's inspired us to do it today in our own little way. So yeah, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
Goodbye, everyone.